This sea was known as the Black Hole of the Ocean during World War II. Any Allied ship that wanted to pass through here would have to die and sink to the bottom of the cold ocean because this place is beyond far from the range of air support. The Nazis set up a submarine battlefield to prevent the US from supplying food and weapons to Europe. The submarine were like ocean ghosts that escaped and appeared, sunk the cargo ship and disappeared without a trace, but even if they had to sacrifice their lives, the sailors still accepted to risk their lives because this was their chance to win against a devastated Nazi Germany. Only 4 USA light destroyers remained to escort 37 cargo ships to Liverpool port. They needed another 50 hours to connect with the British Air Force. The ship commanding the escort group was called Greyhound. This means that a sheepdog can protect the sheep from the wolves that are staking the sea. Captain Nazi is the first commander. Today, there are only 2 soldiers exchanging martial arts with each other, spraying nasal syrup when Eric was about to teach them about solidarity when she received a signal that a German submarine was approaching the fleet. At this time, Germany UB-class submarine were known as the ghosts of the Atlantic. They always secretly sneaked into the army formation, allies to make a surprise attack and then flee, aware of the approaching danger. The captain immediately informed the entire crew to be ready to fight. Everyone quickly moved onto the ship deck to load the Huey cannons on the side. As long as a submarine appears, they will shoot mercilessly, but if they lie down and wait for the enemy to arrive, sooner or later they will lose the battle. So Eris ordered 3 other destroyers to continue their protection mission while he led the Greyhound to pursue the ship. Germany submarine very quickly the enemy position appeared on the radar. At this time, it surfaced to recharge to prepare to attack the Allied force. Eric tried to chase the target, but fierce sea waves made it difficult to determine the enemy position. The submarine was very difficult. Before they could do anything, the Germany ship disappeared. However, soon after, they caught the submarine signal without any propeller noise, proving that it wanted to go through battle. Ship to attack the rescue ship. Anise immediately orders an emergency from around. The target was getting closer, but the male lead suddenly asked the crew to give directions. This made the crew suspicious of the captain. Chien Ha was getting further and further away from the target and eventually lost all trace. Did the living and dead NIS time want to run away? At that moment, the sound of the target propeller suddenly rang out 600 meters away from the battleship. Maris soon guessed that this was the enemy strategy to distract the destroyer, so he used that same strategy to fight back against these thieves. The male protagonist ordered explosive to be prepared immediately. The target was very close to the warships. The sound of the Sona hydrophone rang out continuously, signaling that they were about to attack. But this was also the most appropriate time to catch fish and immediately launch bomb to sink into the sea. Loud explosion continuously rang out, shaking, but when observed, there was no trace of oil floating on the water surface. Could it be that they had failed? Why didn't the male lead hesitate and quickly contact the hydroacoustic team, search target to conduct a second attack? At that moment, the soldiers discovered traces of oil 450 meters away from the battleship. The Sona team also received the sound of the submarine sinking, so they hit the ghost of every ocean. The people who saw this immediately cheered with excitement, even though he had won. He still did not forget to order his subordinates to withdraw from the fight position and switch the ship to a defensive state. Then asked the chef to bring hot food to the sailor. Enjoy it. Just as he was worried, as soon as the battleship Greyhound left, there was suddenly a flare for help from behind. Could it be that the submarine hadn't been sunk by the time Eric and the other turned around? On the other hand, the 2 supply ships were on fire. They could not be rescued and had to let them sink forever in the deep and cold ocean. He could not help but blame himself for not being able to protect them. At this time, another Germany underground chose Greyhound as the target of attack and then launched a torpedo straight towards everyone at alter speed. Eric immediately ordered all right steering to avoid that torpedo. Even though it was his first time as a captain, his ability to direct was extremely sharp, but there was not only 1 submarine but 5 other waiting around the lower NOI. However, they were not in combat range, but just watching from afar was like a pack of wolves waiting for an opportunity to attack the lamb. Eric knew they were waiting for night to fall. At that time, even if they floated tone on the water surface, they would become invisible to the naked eye. The Germans used tactics, surrounding them, causing their prey to live in fear, causing them to make mistakes. The UO with the grey wolf head is their leader. Submarine, they are very close to the Greyhound ship. At this time, the temperature is dropping very quickly, causing Eric warship to almost freeze, so before it was completely dark decided to fight, but at the critical moment, a series of adverse problems hit the radar, which was malfunctioning due to the temperature being too low to be able to determine the exact location of the submarine. The captain ordered all weapons to switch to manual mode. Once an enemy submarine was detected, he immediately opened fire. Even he had to switch to the most primitive method, which was to use a tube, peeking to observe. Although the see and shoot mode does not cause much damage, it also has the effect of making the enemy shy and not daring to take risks. Very quickly, the sky gets dark and black stretches around seemingly endlessly. 36 hours left for the fleet to be supported by the British Air Force from above. Eric drank a cup of coffee to stay awake when he discovered there was a distress signal ahead. He asked everyone to be alert and let the ship run at full speed in the direction of the last signal. A submarine was seen at a distance of 1.5 nautical miles. The male lead immediately ordered the crew to freely shoot and must sink another ship, but at a critical moment, a supply ship lost its brakes and got in the middle. There was no other way. Eric was forced to order an emergency steering attack. The huge cargo ship, no different from a giant, was almost passing the tiny gray house. Again, the whole team held hands on the altar and sat down. Then very quickly another UO appeared right between the supply ship and the battleship Grey House. As soon as it arrived, it pinned a few torpedoes to the supply ship. Soldiers saw that and immediately fired. Crazy artillery, and the UO Eric afraid of hitting the supply ship. They ordered a ceasefire but expected another destroyer to open fire on them. They weren't afraid of a strong enemy, just afraid of their stupid teammates. Luckily, there weren't any, who had to log out of the Earth, and the submarine, after finishing the attack, immediately dived into the sea, intending to play cards and escape. Seeing that, Eric ordered to prepare for a counterattack. He would drop 2 types of explosive barrels, shallow and deep, into the sea like that. However, the ship that was just shot at was an oil tanker, so it could explode at any time, making it impossible for them to get close to the tank full of germs. This time, the more famous German troops made a sound, like a ship propeller used as a decoy to deceive the Sona hydroacoustic team. The bombs fired did not hit their target until he discovered that he had been deceived. The UO had already discovered, while the male protagonist had not yet had time to decide. Apparently, the oil tanker exploded violently, but the hunt was still there. At this time, a distress signal was sent from the rear of the supply ship fleet. They discovered a German submarine approaching and asked for help. Grey House soon supported both sides, each needing rescue, causing the male lead to have a headache and not knowing what to do. He decided to save the victim first and then launched at full speed towards the rear of the squadron. But before he could reach his destination, he added, another supply ship was torpedoed by them. This scene made Eric blame himself for being useless. The German not only played cat and mouse, but they also used English to threaten to sink all the warships, making the soldier falling into despair. Eric also knew that our army communications equipment was no longer effective. If we continued to communicate via radio, the enemy would know all the method of combat. But if we remained motionless, they attacked even more crazily. So while everyone was still falling into a helpless black hole, many cargo ships were torpedoed and sank to the bottom of the ocean. The Allies only had 4 light destroyers, so it was impossible to protect each ship after the hunt. Until morning, the German hid themselves to rest. A total of 5 supply ships were destroyed, 2 ships were seriously damaged, and 210 people were killed. They had to travel 26 hours. At this time, another destroyer discovered the German submarine on Rad Eric and immediately ordered to provide support. But the junior officer reported that the depth charges had been used up. There only one belt left. Boss, if you want to attack, the only option is to wait for them to raise their heads and then play directly. After recalculating the coordinates, they only have 24 hours left to reach the current support point at 8 a.m. That means everyone had to fight until 8 o'clock the next morning, at which point German submarine surfaced again to take gas and reload. Seeing this once in a lifetime opportunity, the NIS immediately ordered a general attack, but the distance was quite far, so they fired all shots. Of course, the enemy did not stand still and let them do whatever they wanted, so they launched 2 torpedoes directly in the directions of the Greyhound. With the experience of her crew, Eric easily controlled the warships to avoid being hit by the destroyer attack. The keel shaft still had a deep explosive barrel, so it continuously ejected. It seems that after the recent attack, the German submarine could not stand the pressure and had to rise to the surface. Turns out, it was so badly damaged that it could no longer dive. How did that happen? The male lead could have missed this God-give opportunity, but he immediately ordered its body to be recovered and brought to the museum for display. Unexpectedly, the German controlled a submarine to move close to the Grey House, taking advantage of the blind spot of the guns, to escape the attack and then gently glide past to the male protagonist Bitterness. Seeing this, the target ship immediately accelerated to follow the enemy, waiting for the opportunity to strike. Eric waited for a longer distance before she could continue to attack the unexpected enemy. Duke got of the ship and shot straight at the Grey House, causing the male lead to almost go back to the remote area. At this time, that unruly boat was in Grey House sight, but if he opened fire, the gun would be shot and he would take advantage of the points. This weak German submarine immediately took action and squeezed the Greyhound testicles, causing a hole in the boat net. Luckily, there were no casualties after Grandpa Dyke left the site. Grey House Eric immediately let all the brother play. The storm of bullet dried up, causing the German tank to discolor after less than a minute. Even though he had successfully destroyed another ocean ghost, the male protagonist could not be happy because his 3 teammates had killed him, sacrificed their lives. But the ceremony to send them back to sea had not yet ended when the rear transport ship sent out a signal for help. It turned out that the nearby corvette Eagle had been torpedoed and set on fire. So everyone immediately moved there to provide relief. The short day passed like that and night began to fall on the Eagle, which was still being towed, but because the sea waves were quite fierce, the water kept pouring into the compartment and there was no way out. They had to abandon it. After a day and a night of non-stop fighting, there were only 3 escort ships left and they were gradually running out of ammunitions, knowing that it would be difficult to continue protecting the supply ship, so Eric decided to send a telegram to Unquoc to ask for help. However, Their signal had been eavesdropped by the Germans, so the center could not respond to that call for help in common language. If they did so, it would be like being cold in the bush. So they decided to use a code to communicate. After decoding the code, NIS understood that his side would change the rescue location, but the time to get there would take at least 3 hours, so forcing them to increase their speed to full speed. When the time was only 2 hours left, the German began a new attack. Very quickly, 2 UOS appeared to the right of Greyhound. After all effort to track a submarine that had fallen into the sight of the male allies, immediately gave the order to open fire and shoot her down. However, the 2 submarines suddenly launched torpedoed, deliberately forming an angle that made it difficult for the Greyhound to escape. Eric stood at the bow of the ship, observed carefully, and then ordered steering wheel to turn. He successfully turned to the left to avoid the first torpedo and the second torpedo. He turned the ship around 180 degrees and prayed to the gods to help him. Fortunately, it only missed the ship life and then sailed away, escaping death. Eric immediately ordered his subordinates to counterattack and bombard the enemy submarine. Seeing that the torpedo had missed, the German ship launched another one. However, the Greyhound crew level was at a new level, so it was easy to dodge. At the same time, the super warships also shot back, causing the heavily damaged tank to float to the surface. This time, you are sure that this spring I will not return. The rain of bullet flew and immediately sent the ghost of the ocean waves back. In the end, the most dangerous command submarine of the German army was torn in two by Greyhound. But the war was not over. When Greyhound and other destroyers were surrounding and attacking the enemy, another German gun suddenly surfaced. It aimed straight at the Greyhound and was about to launch a torpedo right at the moment when the armpit hair was hanging. When a British Navy plane flew to reinforce that gun and smelled something strange, he immediately turned the Swallow away from the scene, but Knight ordered his subordinates to open fire to show the location of the support aircraft. As a result, the giant fish made of metal was grilled on the spot by an anti-submarine torpedo. In the end, the Greyhound and the 2 remaining destroyers successfully completed the escort mission. The next voyage will have British troops covering them, so the Nazis will not risk playing foolishly. The number of movie coming here is end. Hello, and see you all again everyone.